Speaks Talk Radio, where women's words are changing the world.
Hello and welcome to Love Fools with me, your host, Terri Lee-Shield, where we are hopelessly devoted to exploring and embodying the universal language of love. Love Fools is brought to you by Love School, where we explore loving self, others, and everything. Join us there for deeper exploration at www.loveschool.uk. Now for today's episode. Hello and welcome along to this next episode of Love Fools. I am going to be chattering myself again today. Don't worry, I am going to be lining up some brilliant guests for you over the next coming months. But for the time being, while I get that all prepared, you're going to be listening to me and my lovely ramblings all around love. So thank you once again for joining us. Today's episode, I would like to talk about prioritizing in relationships and what that means when navigating your own journey into self-love, or when you're learning to improve your relationships, or when you're maybe having a deeper connection with nature, with life, with everything. And what does it mean to navigate that relationship? How do we deal with the conflict that might arise when we are prioritizing ourselves, for example, or prioritizing somebody else? So this has become something that's relevant in my life right now, and navigating this dynamic between looking after myself, navigating myself and how I care for myself, because I got ill. And the reason that I got ill was because I was helping my nan. I was helping my nan move and she got ill. So then I was supporting and prioritizing my nan, and all of that happened to coincide with when I was wanting to prioritize work, prioritize my giving to the collective, my contribution to the bigger ideas of life. So I've been really challenged with navigating this at the minute, and it really just inspired us to spark a bit of a conversation, a one-sided conversation, because you've got to listen to me talk about it. But I would love to know what you think. So if you are listening on one of the social media platforms where you can comment, please do leave a comment. You can also check us out if you want, if you're a bit curious and you want to see the video of this. We are now publishing our Love Fools episodes over on YouTube. So check out loveschool.uk over on YouTube, and you'll be able to see me talking away to myself, but to you, talking to you via the wonderful world that is the internet. So yeah, if you have any comments, I would love to hear from you. Let me know what you think. So when we are choosing to be more conscious in our relations with ourselves, to have more love in our life, it can have a ripple effect, which is a lot of what we talk about in Love Fools. And we're exploring what is the universal language of love. And if the universal language of love involves giving something nurture, giving something protection, to be really caring about the consequences of something and how it affects what it is that you are loving, then when something needs to be prioritized in our life, that's a really important aspect of love. And it's not something we necessarily do consciously unless we give ourselves the time and space to do it. And each relationship, of course, is different, and each scenario in our lives needs a slightly different priority. But we're very much in our society kind of dictated to, we don't have to follow those dictations, and certainly our journey into healing and self-love and having improved relationships might challenge us to really look at those dictations of priorities. Because in society, very often it's assumed that certain things will be a priority, and they always have to be a priority. And the mental prisons that we can create for ourselves, the mental conditions that can affect our mental health, even our physical health, can really be entrenched in some of these ideas about what our priorities should be and which things we should prioritize and how long we prioritize them for. When the reality is that life is a bit more complex than that, and our priorities can change depending on the situation. Sometimes we might have a standard of priority. And sometimes we might try to pretend that things have equal priority in our life and give it equal space. But situations happen, life happens, and this can force us to really address our priority. So, for example, if we have a health problem, if we suddenly have a health scare, for example, or there's an accumulative effect that's happened and we realize that we are ill, or like what happened to me this week, you catch a bug or something and you actually get ill. Just like that. That was supposed to be me clicking. Just like that, our priorities have to change. Our priority in the case of being ill ourselves has to change into prioritizing our self-love, to nurturing ourselves, to basically letting go very often letting go of as many of our other priorities as we can, so we can prioritize self-care. And that is truly important especially when learning to nurture yourself. So in something that I don't know if it's in every culture, I'm pretty sure it's pretty strong generally in British culture, a good old English British stiff upper lip, and in my working class community, it wasn't really allowed for me to be ill. And if I was ill, I was encouraged to suck it up and carry on, to the point where I made myself very ill. There's some of you, people who follow things that I've said, will know a bit more about the journey. But for those of you that don't, I, at several points in my life, made myself ill because I refused to shift my priority to self-care. So now, as part of my practice, my ongoing practice of self-love, my self-care is a priority, and especially if I get ill, because I consider my illness as a message, as a sign, as a non-avoidable situation that needs my attention. So in this case, when I got ill, I had to take some time off work. I had to really, and this was quite challenging because I have a dog now. I've had her nearly 2 years. It's nearly coming up to my anniversary, and she is gorgeous. She is a big part of my self-care, because looking after her also meets some of my own needs that I need to take care of myself. Taking her out for walks and things, and making sure that she's stimulated for her own growth also helps me. It has that kind of dual effect. But I really had to, this time, I really was proper ill for a few days, and I couldn't even take the dog out for a walk, not even a little bit. For the first I think definitely for the first night when I was really ill, I couldn't do it. And bless her, the dog was super understanding, and it just was really reminding me of how understanding nature and natural beings, like the animals around us, they can be great teachers. She just really accepted that. Obviously, she could tell I was ill. She could tell I had to prioritize self-care. And I could tell at times it was, there you go. If you didn't hear that, that's it. I could tell at times, she was, she really did want her needs taken care of, but she knew that I couldn't. And so I had to let that slip for a while. And I had to allow her as a priority to slide. So aside from her being fed and obviously making sure she had plenty of water, she didn't suffer at all. She just could not walk. And to be fair, although it was very hot and I could leave the door open to get in and out, there were times when I couldn't even let her in and out of the house. She's just had to tolerate my lack of movement while I recovered. And for me personally, because of, like I say, how I was raised and my history of really not prioritizing my health, this is a really important, significant priority that I had to make. I switched off my phone. I just had to miss a couple of appointments, of intentions, of connection that I had made with people, and I'm still going to be catching up with that now because of the ripple effect. But the reason that I ended up being ill was because prior to that, I'd been asked to shift my priorities to helping my nan. My nan is old. She's 83. And she is moving. So she's moved out of the home that she's been in for about 50 years or so to move into a supported living accommodation. And this is something we've been trying to encourage my nan to do for a long time, because actually she surprise. I'm saying that for people who don't know, because I very, very much talk about and believe in repeating patterns, and we learn these behaviors that we have to overcome from our family. They're passed down hereditary, just like genetic disorders. Our behavioral disorders are passed down through the generations. So my nan is actually my dad's mom, but actually she has very similar habits as my mom, and they're both very independent women, and very often won't prioritize their own needs and their health, but because I think they don't want to admit that they need help. Okay, I mean, that's a whole other psychological factor to unpack, but we eventually managed to encourage my nan to make the decision to move into supported accommodation, so she wasn't so alone, because she lived over an hour away and it was difficult for us to go and visit, and she needed more care. And just going through that process with my nan to help her to see that her care needs need to be prioritized. They need a higher priority than what she has grown accustomed to giving them. But that move obviously meant a lot of work. It meant a lot of organization, and it was a big shift and a big change for her. So there was other members of the family that came and helped. I didn't have a massively active role, but I was still required to support her through the process, and part of the physical moving of her stuff on moving day. And all the stress that caused my nan to get a bit run down and get ill, and that's how I ended up getting ill. So through that moving process, she was also unwell, and we had to not only prioritize her moving, but also her health. And it was a bit of a challenge to make that priority for me, because I work seasonally. I have different amounts of work and different types of work that I do depending on the season, depending on the weather. Sometimes I work outside and sometimes I work more inside. And obviously the summer tends to have longer days and a bit more active. And I had planned a busy summer. Obviously setting up Love School and expanding that space and doing some work around that, wanting to get guests recorded for this show, things like that. I had very much planned for the summer. I was running some live events online. My summer has been particularly it's been planned to be particularly busy, because I tend to have more energy in the summer. So it was an intentional busy plan, and I had intentionally intentionally decided that over the summer period, I was going to prioritize my work. So my contribution to the world, my contribution to everything, and expanding that, and bringing a lot of things together so that when the autumn and winter comes, they are established. Anyway, what I'm trying to explain is that it was my priority, my chosen priority for this period was to be prioritizing my collective contributions, my work. And then this opportunity for my nan to move come up. So I knew it was going to be a struggle as soon as it was mentioned. And the situation, obviously, because it's to do with my family, because it's to do with a big significant move, and it was obviously the emotional aspect of getting my family moving through the reality that my nan is getting older, and this means that she's going to need more care and she's not as able to take care of herself, all that emotional toll, plus all the physical work and effort and organization that would be needed to move her. It was a big event for my family. And my family, because they're used to me being the one who is most active in going to support my nan, kind of expected me just to be doing this. And it was really not great timing. So in order to take care of myself, to be able to stand in my own power of my own boundaries and my own self-care, I had to tell them, this is a really busy time for me. This is really not the best timing, and I'm not going to be able to prioritize this move. So it was requiring a stretch in my relationship skills, in the conflicts that then potentially arose. And I'm not going to go into the details of all my family dynamics, but they're not, I don't find them the easiest people to communicate with. They are not great communicators. Hence why I spend so much time having to relearn how to communicate and emotional regulation and the like. So this was a real test, this situation. And especially for them as well, some of them seemed a bit annoyed that I wasn't going to be prioritizing them, or like nan, or that move, or that collective family preference. And I was instead prioritizing myself and my work. But anyway, there was a workaround, and we kind of came up against some challenges at times, real conflict, as there was miscommunications, and my personal preferences of how I would communicate weren't considered, respected, and I had to navigate my own boundaries with that. But I really wanted to stand firm in this priority that my work was important. And prioritize the relationship I've nurtured for a long time between my nan and I. And this situation, just the timing of it, caused a bit of stress on that, a bit of tension on that. And how was I going to be prepared to shift my priority? Now, very often it can be a challenge to have to shift our priorities for other people, especially unexpected priorities, or especially priorities that we've been trying to prioritize for a long time beforehand, that when that comes to fruition isn't convenient or helpful for us. So it is something we want to prioritize, but then we might not actually have the capacity. And this is the juggling act. This is what I consider the real work of doing this work, and the kind of work that we explore at Love School. Why does it all matter? Because, well, I could have tried to please everybody. I could have tried to promise or try to hold on to the old ideas that I had for myself in those relationships, that I needed to prioritize that move. And actually that would have caused a lot of stress for me and my work. And I didn't do that. I didn't follow my old pattern. And then that meant that there was some conflict that arose, and I had to then try to prioritize nurturing and protecting those relationships that I had been building and developing when people were not pleased with me and my decision. And that in and of itself was a challenge. But actually, what I had to do in the situation was let go of those relationships, or in particularly the importance of those relationships as a priority, in order to accommodate the priority of my self-care and the care for my work that I was really, felt was really important at the time. And yes, obviously I want to keep those relationships, but actually, if I was to choose what's more important to me, my work that supports me every day, pretty much, or these relationships that have minimal contribution in my life and actually take more than they give to me, what am I going to prioritize? And just being in a position to ask those important questions of myself allowed me to navigate the situation. So very often we don't do this. We just go along and we just think that we have to prioritize and we need to prioritize everything, but it's not possible to do that. Sometimes it's possible to give something an equal priority, but very often something has to give. And if we don't consciously choose that for ourselves, if we're not consciously choosing what's going to give in this situation as we navigate it, it'll be chosen for us, and we'll still have to feel the effects. So in my case, I chose to prioritize my work and my relationship with my nan and my own self-care, and everything else had to take a back seat. And that meant navigating some conflict, but only as it arose. As it came up, I had to deal with the reactions and responses of other people. Now, that was all my great intention, and everything happened, the move happened and stuff. And then all of a sudden, situations changed again. Obviously, once my nan got ill, she had to take more of a priority because, well, what's more important? Again, I had to ask that question myself. What now is more important? This work that I'm doing, which is for the collective, or my nan's health? And my nan's getting old, there's a good chance, in the next few years, she's going to die. And it's important to me that I nurture that relationship as best I can for as long as I can. So again, snap, the priority had to change. So suddenly, I had to allow my work to drop off. Not completely, but it had to become less of a priority. And yes, okay, that was a bit upsetting within myself now. There wasn't really any conflict externally. I hadn't made any plans with my work that were set in stone. They were just preferences. But once my nan became ill, I had to then let go of all of the expectations I'd put on myself, all of the aspirations that I had been attaching to what might happen once this work was completed, and it caused a rejuggle in my schedule, in my future, potentially how I navigate this in the future. So what I'm trying to express here is, as situations unfold, when we're being conscious of how we're loving ourselves and other people and what we do in the world, situations change, and we can just flow along with it. Of course we can, but when we do it without choosing, other things can come up, underlying resentments, having to then, if my work had been affected without my choice, that may have caused me a lot more stress. That might have caused me a lot more mental health support for myself that I would have to provide. But because I then, once the situation changed and I consciously changed my priority, that process was a lot easier for me to manage in myself. So therefore, it made my self-care priority stand firm. And then again, as I explained, I caught the bug. I got the illness that made my nan ill. And then again, my priority had to change. So I couldn't care for my nan because I was ill now. And you know what? I had to take care of myself. And I had to make that choice, because what would have happened if I had not prioritized myself and still carried on trying to care for my nan? I might have made myself even more seriously ill. And of course, the ripple effect of that would affect my relationships and my work. So just being flexible when it comes to love, when it comes to our relationships, when it comes to how we're working and contributing in the world, is part of our mastery of self, our self-awareness. And there's nothing wrong with choosing your priorities, with letting people down sometimes because something has to take a higher priority. It's really important that when we are navigating a journey to improve our health and well-being or relationships, that we are able to add this flexibility for ourselves and for other people. It's not always healthy to be rigid with our priorities. Sometimes, for sure, and definitely this has supported me long term, getting clear about my priorities and what generally I prioritize day to day, what's important for me and what's more important than other things. What am I prepared to, what am I consciously trying to balance often as a priority? As a day-to-day ongoing thing, being quite firm in my boundaries of those priorities has been really helpful. But life happens and we can't always stay firm to our priorities when situations unfold. And if we are sticking so rigidly to those boundaries when a situation is unfolding, it can have a ripple effect that we're not choosing. It can have a ripple effect that we can't manage. So just really understanding for ourselves where our idea about our priorities, where the idea of what we would like to prioritize needs to shift with the reality of the circumstance, is really helpful. It's super beneficial for yourself, for other people, even if it means you then have a bit of conflict to navigate. At least that conflict is in line with your priorities. It's in line with your overall wellness and your overall well-being. You're not detrimenting yourself to try and stay rigid to something that, yes, is important to you, but is not as important as something else right now. So practicing this takes time, especially if you are a people pleaser, especially if you are been, quite rigidly using you're setting your boundaries to help with your health and well-being or health journey or something. This can all take practice to become more flexible or to become more firm. And knowing when and how to practice that is really important for your health and well-being. So all that being said, I trust that this episode has been helpful, and I would love to hear about what you think about prioritizing, about when to shuffle your priorities, what situations have caused you to have to really assess or shuffle your priorities, and how important are priorities when it comes to love. Thank you for listening, guys. I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to this episode of Love Fools, where we have been exploring and embodying the universal language of love. Love Fools is brought to you as part of Love School, where we explore what it means to love self, others, and everything. For more information, come and have a look at our site, www.loveschool.uk.